This is the driver's side suspension, and it's proving to be a little problematic, just because it's more work than I thought it would be. There's a lot of material that had to be removed up in here, and back in here, you can see that's all ground down. I think I went a little too far, like this. This gap doesn't need to be here, but just the way I was cutting it, it's sort of, well, it turned out that way. But what I've discovered, though, is if I come around the other side, there's a lip at the back right here that is also getting in the way. I'm not really sure if it needs to get ground down. Like, the airbag might function perfectly. What I'm worried about is when this expands, that it'll get cut on that. But this isn't a sharp edge, so I'm not sure if I need to remove it, but my instinct is to remove it. I finally got the bag seated in there properly, and that took some doing. It was just tonight I even figured out it wasn't seated properly before, and I was worried I might have to either modify the mounting bracket or do some cleanup inside. There's like a bunch of little triangles protruding down from inside there, and they're what holds the coil spring in place. I wasn't sure if the diameter of the airbag bracket was the same as the coil spring, but it turns out it is. So it's all coming together. It's just a lot of work. Grinding down all that metal here and there is a real pain in the butt. And I still haven't even tested this to see if it works. But you get the idea, though. This suspension's mostly reassembled, and it's looking good. What I really need to do is just get all this airbag stuff out of the way and then torque everything down, and I'll be good to go. A quick video update to celebrate the completion of the installation of the airbags and the reassembly of the driver and passenger side suspension. I still need to put on the rotors and the brake calipers and the brake pads and, of course, the tires. But all of this is all cleaned up. The airbags fit perfectly. Spent about the past 4 hours grinding out the openings in the frame so that they fit when they inflate and don't get snagged on any edges. Because the coil springs obviously were narrower in diameter than the bags are when they're inflated. I also cleaned up that cross member. It's all painted with that rust encapsulator stuff. Yeah, so it's looking really good right now. I'm really happy with how clean everything is. Really happy that those airbags are installed. I did a test inflation, everything, so really good. And I think if I keep hustling, I'll be able to get this front end all locked down before the end of the weekend. There's definitely a pattern to these videos. I started on the passenger side, moved to the driver's side. Lots accomplished today. I'm not quite done yet, but here's the passenger side. I've gotten the dust cover and the rotor installed. And everything's all torqued down except for the ball joint nuts because I don't want to torque those until I have a load on them. But everything else is where it needs to be. Moving over to the driver's side. This side's much farther along. I've got the brake caliper on, got the brakes in, hooked up the, what is that? The brake cable thing? I don't know. But I'm really happy with how it turned out. I did a little of my restoration magic on that. Took the wire wheel to all those couplers. Took the wire wheel to that mount and then repainted it. Looks pretty cool. And of course, I love how the caliper looks. Still some rust on the rotor. I don't think that's gonna affect performance. But yeah, it's coming together. This thing's almost ready. The driver's side's almost ready to have the wheel put on. I just need to attach the linkage in there, put the sway bar back on, and put the sway bar linkage together. Then I will put the wheel on, put it at load, and then tighten down those ball joint nuts. Yes. Today's the last Sunday of 2020, thank goodness. And I've come a long way just in the past few days. This little weekend's been very packed. Let me show you what I got done today. I reinstalled the sway bar and changed out the bushings and the mounts there. And the sway bars connect to those links, which I installed today on both sides. And I also reconnected the steering. So, aside from the wheel being on this side and some final fine tuning on the brake caliper, driver's side's done. I cleaned up all those bars, just got the grease and dirt and dust off them. They're not perfect, but I was thinking of painting those, but they seem pretty well protected as is. Those those adjustment things right there. I don't know what the name is for those. I might go back in and clean those up, but they're holding it pretty well, so I might just leave it. I'm at that point where I really need to start choosing my battles, or else I'm just going to be doing this forever. You can see over here, there's that linkage again. There's that steering all hooked up. I do still need to tighten and torque down some of the castle nuts, but all of the stuff inside the suspension, like those bolts in the back, bolts on the top, those have all been torqued. But I do want to get some load on it before I tighten everything down. So what I'm missing on the passenger side right now, the brake caliper, there's a thing called a banjo bolt. And it has two brass washers, one on the top, one on the bottom. And I found out in a video last night, you're not supposed to reuse them because they sort of crush to conform to the shape when you tighten it up. And these have already been crushed. So I went to the auto parts store today and they did not have them. So that's a bummer. Maybe I'll try another one. So I'm holding off on the caliper, but I've got the brake pads all set to go. The bolts and the fittings are all set and all cleaned up. In fact, let's go take a look. I am absolutely enamored by all those restoration videos on YouTube where they like take some old anvil and after 15 minutes it looks brand new. And one of the things they do a lot is they put a wire wheel on a drill press to clean up metal parts, getting rust and grime off them and stuff like that. And man, I did that with these bolts and these little bushings, and they just came out beautifully. Unfortunately, it did reveal there's some pitting on these things, and I'm tempted to replace them. I don't know. If you have any thoughts on that, comment down below. It'll probably be too late, but I'm really curious. And like these bolts have some pitting. Maybe I'll look into replacing them, see if they're, I mean, if it's just like 10 bucks, I might as well just get a set. But they just look so pretty, all cleaned up. I did the same thing with these old brake pads. This is another thing where like, I could just buy a new pair, but there's plenty of life left in these. They need a good cleaning on the pads themselves, but you know, there's a lot of brake left in that. And on the other side that I installed, I can see the wear indicator is still real far away from the rotor. So it's one of those things where I'm like, well, I could spend the money, but I kind of like cleaning the stuff up, and I think it'll work okay. And what I'm also worried about is sort of the cumulative effect of the approach of let's just buy replacements for everything. Like, yeah, it's $5 here, $5 there, 20 bucks here, 20 bucks there, but you know, over the course of a year or two, now I'm $2,000 in on parts that probably were serviceable. But this kind of stuff sort of worries me. And I don't know if it should, but I guess that's where experience comes in. Anyway, that's what's going on right now. One step closer to being done. I got the brakes finished. I actually ended up getting new brake pads. I was taking a look at the ones I had, and they were a little rusted, and I wasn't really sure how much wear they had on them. And a new set cost me like 30 bucks. They're brand new. And interestingly enough, when I held them next to my old set, there really wasn't that much wear on the old set. So the car only had 12,000 miles in it when I bought it, but that was from 1996. So 24 years worth of rust, 12,000 miles worth of driving. So mixed bag, but the new brakes only cost me a few bucks. Got them installed real quick, locked up the calipers, and put the wheels on after wire wheeling all of the lug nuts and washers. So the front's not done, but it's at a point where I can start focusing on the rear and then focus on the airbag system. There's still some things I need to do on the front when the time comes, like tighten everything down. I need to replace the washers on the banjo nut on the caliper. But other than that, yeah, looking good.